Hi everyone, we've got a great selection of surprisingly good and shockingly bad news in gaming again. Some Lego here, some movies there, we'll see what happens. Fasten your seatbelts, here comes the news. Tango Gameworks is back. The studio, founded in 2010 by Shinji Mikami, back then Capcom's own, responsible for The Evil Within, Ghostwire Tokyo and Hi-Fi Rush, was taken over by Bethesda and its parent company ZeniMax during its founding year after it ran into some financial difficulties. ZeniMax was then bought by Microsoft in 2012. In 2023, Mikami himself left the studio for a new startup called Kamui, and last year Tango was completely shut down as part of several studio closures by Microsoft Studios. On August 24th, South Korean publisher Krafton, mainly known for PUBG, picked up Tango Gameworks for an undisclosed price. After that, we didn't hear anything about the matter for a while. Now Tango announced on social media, we are back in business. Tango Gameworks is returning to the development stage under the slightly new name Tango Gameworks Incorporated, now part of Krafton, and it's working on future projects. The rights to the old Evil Within and Ghostwire series remain with Microsoft, who already announced in advance that they will continue to support Tango and future Hi-Fi Rush projects. Tango itself now wants to continue working at full speed. A new studio has been opened in Tokyo. The new studio manager, Colin Mack, who has been in the business since Siberia and was brought over from an executive producer position by Bethesda. John Johannes, who has been part of Tango since Evil Within, is starring as creative director, and Kazuaki Egashira, been with the team since the start, is the development director. The publisher change has no effect on existing titles. Now all that remains is to wait anxiously for the next title from Tango Gameworks. Members of the former Annapurna Interactive staff, who left the company last summer, are also apparently back in business. As Bloomberg reports, all ex-staffers have founded a new, as of yet unnamed, company, which is now to take over the portfolio of the previous Take-Two indie label Private Division. Last year, Private Division was sold by Take-Two, and according to Bloomberg, the mystery buyer now turns out to be Heavily Investments, a Texas-based investment firm run by Brian Sheth, who has worked for giant conglomerates such as Goldman Sachs. Around the same time, the entire staff of Annapurna Interactive, the games division of media publisher Annapurna Pictures, left the company after various failed negotiations. Bloomberg also says that existing members of Private Division can expect an unknown number of layoffs until the partnership is completed. After that, Private Division's entire catalog, including the Lord of the Rings Crossing game Tales of the Shire and Game Freak's upcoming game Project Bloom, will be published under the new company. Some less good news from Splash Damage, the studio behind Gears of War 4, and some less successful shooty-shooties like Brink or Dirty Bomb. In a social media message, Splash Damage published news about the upcoming title Transformers Reactivate. The decision has been made to cancel the title and to stop development. According to the studio, this also means scaling down to focus on other projects, blah blah blah, some nice words telling us we're so back in business for layoff talks in 2025. I almost felt safe, but alas. A number of roles across the entire studio are now, as they say, potentially at risk of redundancy, and some have already received their goodbye emails. Splash Damage says they want to do everything they can to make the farewell to friends and colleagues as painless as possible and to support the departing employees as best as they can. Speaking of support, the Cooldown is neither sponsored nor am I being bombarded with Lego sets or video games, so if you want to support me, just take note of the subscribe button below. One click will make me more than happy, and if you want to help out even more, check out my Ko-fi or consider a Prime sub on Twitch, but I'm telling you straight away, there are much better options with other creators. Either way, thank you so much. Rocksteady presumably also received some of these friendly emails from the CEO after the official end of Suicide Squad, but it's still unclear how many people are affected by this second wave of layoffs in the studio within 3 months. Eurogamer reports half a dozen developers have already been in contact with them, and so far QA, programming and art seem to be affected. The niche console hardware scene is going crazy right now, and after a new handheld from Atari last week, we got another announcement from Remake, the hardware company co-founded by Taki Udon, a well-known face in the handheld modding scene. The first affordable FPGA game console, with the somewhat unfortunate name SSOne, is basically a PlayStation 1 emulator that's a little bigger than the palm of your hand. It supports original games, the final model also comes with disk support, memory cards and controllers, but also offers new features like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi support, digital output via HDMI and NFC, whatever that is for. Pre-orders are not yet available, but the device should cost around $150 for early buyers. I'll put a link to Taki's page in the description. Anyone who finds this video here later will probably find a pre-order or purchase link there as well. Nintendo is still making us wait for an official announcement, so let's take a quick look at Microsoft. On January 23rd, there will be a new Xbox Developer Direct, and with it a look behind the scenes and some pictures of upcoming games. Compulsion Games will be showing news from South of Midnight. Sandfall Interactive has a new showcase for Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Its software will be showing more Doom: The Dark Ages, which should be particularly interesting for those interested in engine technologies. There's also a small teaser. Microsoft wants to visit a surprise location to show a brand new game from another studio. Some rumors point at Bethesda, who have been working on a not-so-secret remaster remake of The Elder Scrolls Oblivion for some time now. Jess Corden, editor at Windows Central and generally well connected in the scene, is already hinting on social media at this Direct being somewhat bigger than Xbox is leading on. Either way, it should be an interesting preview of Xbox's upcoming 2025 portfolio. Assassin's Creed Shadows is apparently being delayed again. While Ubisoft is still in the middle of a drama surrounding the existence and potential sales and purchases of its own studio, the latest installment in the series has had to be pushed back again. But this time only by a month. Shadows was normally due to be released in February, but now it will be March 20th. This is the second delay for the title. Ubisoft justifies the delay by saying it's part of a renewed focus on gameplay quality and day one experience, which to me, as the old cynic I am, likely can be translated as the pre-order and premium editions content being expanded, to make a higher buy-in more encouraging. It seems rather unlikely that much will be changed in the base game at this point. Ubisoft also says this additional time will allow the team to better incorporate the player feedback we have received over the 3 months into the game, and thus prepare the best conditions for a launch by continuing to interact closely with the increasingly positive AC community, which, and I'm sorry, reads a bit funny to me after the previously very toxic and often extremely negative feedback about Assassin's Creed Shadows. I can't really say whether Ubisoft really means it or whether a particularly sarcastic writer was at work here, but either way, we'll have to wait a bit longer for Assassin's Creed Shadows. CI Games, makers of Lords of the Fallen, are addressing fans and saying, "We will not be integrating DEI elements into our games. The world seems to be getting more and more stupid, and unfortunately I can't do anything about it." During an investor call recently, the studio was asked, presumably by some Twitter troll, about their stance on DEI in gaming, whatever that means. For those who literally have no idea what the term itself stands for, DEI is an abbreviation for diversity, equality, inclusion, and mainly refers to the integration of other characters, in particular from minority groups. This includes pretty much anything from skin color to gender identity, from sex to sexuality, and so on. The term actually used to have positive connotations, as you can imagine, and corresponding initiatives are committed to the visibility of various groups that are generally often deliberately ignored or excluded in the media, corporate landscapes, and everyday life. It's quite simple, you mostly just create things about what you know yourself, and only a few of the people who actually have something to say in these areas have their own experience with the relevant topics. In the meantime, the abbreviation has been adopted by the usual parties as a socio-political battle cry, and at least for their own side, turn into a negative. Whenever someone is actively speaking out against it, it's usually more of a sign of a certain political attitude. But that doesn't stop CI Games. In response to the question, the studio confirmed that they are committed to producing video games that want to prioritize excellent user experiences with interesting themes and characters that are specifically made for a core and adjacent audience. End of quote. And just in case you didn't pick up on it, core audiences in this case very obviously is a stand-in for white male audiences. According to their statement, this excludes social and political agendas, as games with such themes fall short of expectations, especially financially. What exactly the whole mess is supposed to mean in detail is of course not said, as usual, and most of the statements disappear into a mishmash of subtext and the usual undefined depiction of an unseen enemy, as we have known since the Gamergate times. Well, make of that what you will. For me personally, the failure of Lords is more due to it being a pretty mediocre game, not some shadowy cabal of black trans lesbians who want to destroy gaming in general. But who knows? All I know is that I will be avoiding games by CI Games for the time being, and I'm really tired of talking about this nonsense any longer. Things aren't looking good for TikTok either, after the product from Chinese manufacturer ByteDance refused to hand over all technical and content documents and company secrets at the behest of the US government. They stuck to their previous position. If the Supreme Court would not cancel or otherwise postpone its planned changes to the law regarding the sale of TikTok, they would stick to their own plans to cancel the service for the states on January 19th without replacement. Now Axios has confirmed that this is exactly what is going to happen. According to internal sources, the court wants to keep the draft and thus ban TikTok as a platform within the United States, if it's not being sold immediately, which, as already established, will not happen. The law would only allow TikTok to continue operating if it used an algorithm other than ByteDance's own, and ByteDance, as a Chinese company, could not rely on American fundamental rights, which would clearly prevent this. Now, of course, one can speculate wildly as to the extent to which US-based companies such as YouTube, Twitch or Facebook have had a say in here, with TikTok being a massive competition for years, as their algorithm simply works better for the target group than their own. One can also speculate as to whether harmful content is really the big issue here, as opposed to the big amount of money that the USA might be losing, or about the possibility of stoking a general red scare fear over China itself. The only thing certain is that despite all the massive problems with TikTok's razor-sharp algorithm, which to be fair makes it extremely easy for both dangerous and harmless content to be played out to a very receptive audience, it certainly suits various American social companies quite well. Will other countries follow suit? No idea, but TikTok's community landscape will certainly suffer quite a bit, as many international and inclusive communities on TikTok have also largely emerged from the USA. And because politics is so much fun and today is apparently a roller coaster day, the New York Times is reporting on upcoming changes to Zuckerberg's multi-million-dollar empire, which are now just around the corner in preparation for the Trump era, and which were announced by Zuckerberg himself in a terrifically embarrassing livestream. It should be said in advance that dear Mark did not share this information with his subordinates beforehand. His first information went to well-known mainly right-wing and conservative influencers, and only then to his own company and the press. So what's going to change? First of all, the fact-checking program is being stopped completely, in the spirit of, in big quotation marks, free expression of opinion. This program was set up specifically to destroy misinformation and lie campaigns. Instead, Zuckerberg now wants to rely on users to correct false information. In addition, Facebook will, in the future, put more political materials into its users' feeds, after initially deliberately not doing this. In addition, trans and non-binary themes that are currently available in Messenger will be removed, and a corresponding rule change, now officially and specific, allows for statements that trans people do not exist. Tampon dispensers have been removed from the male-coded bathroom in Meta HQ, all DEI programs are being discontinued and employees responsible for them have been removed. All recruitment targets for minorities and so on have been discontinued. I want to clarify this again. These new guidelines for the company across Facebook, Instagram and Threads still have a rule that prohibits users from calling other users mentally ill or abnormal, but this is now explicitly allowed if it's used to address gender or sexual orientation. That's actually what the guidelines say. I link it below, that's what it says. What's happening to this world? Since its launch, to the surprise of many players, Marvel Rivals has supported mods and custom skins with which players have, for example, converted Iron Man into Vegeta or brought other characters from anime and comics into the game. Fun and games are now over though, as the Season 1 update for Rivals not only delivers the Fantastic Four as new characters, but also ends support for mods. Whether this was ever intended is of course a completely different question, as free-to-play character shooters do not usually make their money by giving players the opportunity to simply bring their desired characters into the game for free. Developer NetEase seems to carry the same opinion, having warned players in advance not to change the game files, but that did not stop said players from doing so anyway. Since the new update, Rival now controls the hash signatures of all game files, making the use of mods, skins and other changes to the game impossible. NetEase told IGN that it's not recommended to modify any game files and that doing so always carries the risk of a ban. It remains to be seen whether the modders will be able to work around the new restrictions, but Marvel Rivals is now effectively mod-free. An all-time classic is sneaking up on Steam and consoles. House of the Dead 2 will be getting a remake, and even though there's no date in sight, it looks like it will be a lot of fun. House of the Dead 2, originally a Sega arcade game, is being developed by Megapixel Studio and published by Forever Entertainment, just like its predecessors, and has a wonderfully stupid story and uses light gun with mouse gameplay, which actually works quite well for the genre. In addition to the classic campaign, there's a boss mode and a training mode, as well as remastered and modern graphics, remastered music, optionally to the original soundtrack, a co-op mode and various endings. If you like to have a bit of fun in your zombie games, I highly recommend this thing. It's an absolute cult classic for a reason. Love and Deepspace is a mega popular mobile game that you've probably never heard of, and it's from the minds of the studio behind Infinity Nikki, which probably answers your previous question right away. The studio, which is largely female staffed, is bringing a new feature to its mobile game that to my knowledge has never been implemented before, namely a period tracker. Players can enter their real-life menstrual data here, and this will be incorporated into the so-called Remind Me system. The whole thing works pretty much like a calendar app within the game, and when the time comes, players are reminded by a cute game character directly in the game. There's a dedicated space for the menstrual cycle, and after the initial amazement, you have to admit that this is actually a pretty cool thing for all players concerned, and a bit more positivity for corresponding reproductive health would certainly do us all a lot of good. How one might be feeling about giving out that data to a games company though is an entirely different question. Nexon's upcoming title, the first Berserker Khazan, has already generated some hype during a few game presentation streams. It's an action role-playing game in the Dungeon and Fighter series and looks a bit like a pretty decent Souls-like. Anyone who's waiting for it can now look forward to actually play it, because a good 2 months before the launch of the game there's gonna be a demo. It will be available on PC, PlayStation and Xbox starting January 16th and will not only stay online for quite a while, but will also be playable for an unlimited period of time. How big the scope will be remains to be seen, of course. New servers for The Lord of the Rings Online are on the way. You've probably heard how I've been getting upset about the terrible US servers when playing from EU on the livestream. Feel free to check it out on Twitch or YouTube. We've also seen the launch of the first EU servers after a long time, back then under Codemasters and Turbine, but which can currently only be used as classic servers. But now, LOTRO is announcing 4 new servers for the first quarter of 2025. Glamdring for the USA, Orcrist for the EU, and Meriadoc and Peregrine, respectively, as role-playing servers for EU and US. Daybreak has invested a lot in LOTRO, and these new servers are the sum of 2.5 years of work to improve performance. We've completely reworked a lot of technology during this time, Standing Stone says, calling these servers mega servers because they can host more players than previous ones. We want everyone to play together, not spread across lots of small servers, they add. EU servers will be hosted at the same location as the current Mordor server, which means that German-speaking players and the rest of Europe can finally play normally with normal pings. Transfers to the new server will be free, but transfers between the US and EU servers will not be possible. VIP players will have the chance to reserve names, but only for day 1. After that, the rest of the player base will also be able to use the new servers. Standing Stone Games expects millions of old names being previously claimed by dead accounts to be available again as a result of the server move. In August, a thorough check is planned to look over the population of all existing servers and, if necessary, shut down the emptiest ones. The update is planned for the 2nd week of February. Please remind me so that we can save our characters accordingly. Meanwhile, The Elder Scrolls Online has just released its update 45, the first update of the year, bringing 2 new 4-player dungeons with their own storylines, characters and challenges, a rework of several starter zones and numerous quality of life improvements. The direct-to-streaming film Section 31 is the next big Star Trek thing in the works. actor Robert Kaczynski, perhaps best known from the Warcraft film or Pacific Rim, has now raised doubts about the potential quality of the spin-off in an interview with SFX magazine, and let's be honest, Star Trek fans will probably not be surprised by this. Apparently, even the makers are preparing for a medium-sized flop. In the interview, Kaczynski says, "I'm terrified of how it will be received. It's not the Trek people want. The Star Trek that people want would just be 1,000 more episodes of The Next Generation, even though everyone hated it when it came out. Now our film is coming out and it won't feel like any Trek they've ever seen. I'm afraid it wouldn't even feel like Trek at all. Section 31 will revolve around the secret organization within Starfleet, best known from Deep Space Nine, which uses means the official organization would not touch, and secretly protects the Federation from potential dangers. Michelle Yeoh from Star Trek Discovery will return for her role. I'm pretty sure I'm already out with reservations." There have been constant rumors about a World War Hulk adaptation for the MCU, and after parts of the story were already included in Thor Ragnarok, there was little hope. But now, according to a trustworthy insider, according to comicbookmovie.com, there is good news. A film project is apparently in development, but this is supposed to be about the Hulk plural. World War Hulks will not only feature Banner himself, but also Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, and probably the upcoming Red Hulk from the upcoming Captain America Brave New World. As with all leaks, I can't promise whether there's any truth to this. We will probably find out this year at Comic-Con or Disney's in-house exhibition D23. There's actually still news from LEGO after last week's info dump. While the whole world is waiting for the Switch 2 announcement, there now is actually a new console announcement from Nintendo, but it's namely a teaser for LEGO Game Boy. The set 72046 is almost certainly the direct successor to the LEGO NES set from 2020. The Game Boy is due to be released in October and there isn't much to see yet, but as only absolute LEGO professionals like me notice, the D-pad part shown is exactly 3x3 studs in size, so I can almost exclusively guarantee you that the LEGO Boy will be roughly the size of a real Game Boy in terms of scale, maybe a tiny bit smaller. Other than that, no info, sorry. But while I'm at it, I can also mention that Nintendo has apparently actually noticed that the world is going completely nuts when it comes to leaks, rumors and alleged pictures of the Switch 2. And they have made an actual comment that reads, "These pictures and videos are not official." And I can continue to tear out my hair because they use the word official and neither true, correct, appropriate, right or somewhat realistic. Anyone who, like me, always loved watching Adventure Time and fell into a deep hole after the series and all the spin-offs finally ended, may now be in luck. A new comic series about Jake and Finn will be published monthly starting this year, 7 years after the first series, and will feature rotating casts of artists and writers. A colorful mix of comic writers and former Adventure Time ones. The first issue will be published by Oni Press at the beginning of April. It is not yet known whether there will be a publisher picking it up for other areas outside the US, but there will certainly be ways and means to get hold of it anyway. Alright, that's enough for now. Thank you for watching. You'll probably see me again next week. Unless you want to watch me develop some games, then come along to my live streams on Twitch and YouTube. Preferably use the bell so you don't miss anything. Take care and stay caring. I'm Tiku, this has been the news of the week. From an executive producer production and was brought over by over in an executive no over from an executive producer over from an executive